Here we are. Welcome to the Better Learning Podcast, where curious minds collide with bold ideas and fresh perspectives. So ultimately, it's about what makes school better for every learner. So I'm your host. I'm joined today by Jessica, our LSI in Massachusetts, and then Courtney, a good friend of mine from, oh my gosh, I always want to say Buffalo, Courtney,
it's
but
okay. It's Rochester. We're close. We're an hour,
right? Mm-hmm. All right. I'll get it right one of these days.
It's all Western New York, so
Ra-cha-cha.
Ra-cha-cha, yes.
I got you. I obviously know all about you. I think Jessica knows a little bit about you, but tell me all things Courtney.
Sure. So my full name, Courtney Ter-Velde. I am a certified interior designer in the state of New York. As you mentioned, I live and work in Rochester, although I am from Los Angeles. That's where I was raised, and moved to Rochester in 2008 with my now lovely husband. But through my journey in being a senior interior designer and an interior designer, I have actually since migrated over to project management. So I am kind of going into my second year as a project manager. I work at LaBella Associates. We are a mid-sized full-service AE firm based in Rochester, but we have offices all throughout New York, all throughout the East Coast and down into the South. We also have offices in Madrid and in Scotland. So
stop it. So I see a move in your future.
Yeah. I know. I really need to brush up on my Spanish.
Yeah. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
You just get it going.
Yeah, exactly. Take a little work trip. Yeah. And then I've been involved in A4LE, so Association for Learning Environments, for about 6 years now. Former or past president for New York chapter. I am incoming president for the Northeast Regional Board, and currently acting as secretary for the New York chapter as well. And I serve on another board for a local school district on their student foundation committee, where we raise money throughout the year and then we give student scholarships. So I help put together the gala with the board members and review applications and all sorts of stuff like that. So pretty involved, but it's really where my passion lies. So it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah, I was going to say they really know how to get you for sure.
Yes, I am love a committee, so I'm usually yes to that.
I guess I wouldn't have thought it. So it's only been 6 years.
6 years, but there's a lot that can be accomplished in 6 years.
Yeah. So, I think back to, I could tell you the exact time where, even before working for A4LE, that my job, suddenly the focus became on schools and education and design and planning and all of that. And I think that we all, once you get settled into work like we do, we have that defining moment. So do you remember how you first got involved in schools?
I do. So I think much like a lot of people, my journey wasn't linear. I actually was living in Chicago for a couple of years. We moved there so my husband could finish his educational journey. And I was working for a small firm, and they had a market sector where they sort of specialized in K-12 design, which I had not done a lot of. Actually, my career started doing retail design. I worked for a tea company for 2 years, helping them design and build out 9 stores, including a kiosk. Which was a very, very fast-paced, exciting experience, kind of fresh out of school. I went to school later to do interior design. So my first foray outside of high school actually was a musical theater performer, and I did some touring company. I was a sociology major. And then when I moved to Rochester, I went back to school to get my degree in interior design. So I bring that up because I think with my background in sociology, with my background in performing and arts, I really felt like I wanted to have a greater connection with people. And while the retail design was exciting because I got to do some unique things in terms of aesthetics, I didn't really feel like I was, how do I want to say this? I don't feel like I was giving back in the way that really felt important. I wasn't making an impact in the way that for who I am was necessary. So when I started working for this firm in Chicago, and they had the opportunity for me to be working on educational spaces, I kind of said, yes, let's try that. And I really fell in love with it right away. That would have been, gosh, like 2015. So I've spent the better part of 11 years of my 14-ish years in this career doing educational design, and I have zero interest in doing much else. I've really kind of gone, taken a full dive into it. I mean, it's so rewarding. So
Yeah.
Well, I think there is always that. I mean, obviously, we roped Jessica into this job, but she can't.
I was gonna say, I was like, I come from that passion, absolutely, and education, and I love hearing designers who go into the K-12 space after, because it is such a heartfelt, like it's such a personal, like human being type of thing to be in schools. And I love diving into LaBella Associates, and there was one line that I do want to pull out because it was beautiful, and it said, "Design can reinforce existing behaviors or spark new ones."
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. It came right from your website, and it like completely aligned to, like Carla said, she kind of recruited me here because I am an educator, and I love when we think about not only design, but schools with students in mind, right? And so we have our radically student-centered, approach. So I would love, in your words, what does it mean to be radically student-centered to you?
Sure. So I've mentioned this before, but it always rings true, is you have to really focus on the students, and you have to make design about the impact of the student. Mm-hmm. And designing for educational spaces does not just mean increasing educational adequacy or changing educational outcomes. When we're looking at designing for students, we have to recognize that these spaces, schools, can contribute so much to these students' lives. Yeah. It is a space where they can find safety. It's a space where they can develop who they are, get a sense of self. They might learn trust in a space like this, collaboration, connection. So the educational aspect is certainly important. It is the goal for administrators, I think, but really if you take a big step back and you widen your aperture on that a school can be so much more. And so taking into consideration those types of spaces, certainly the student demographic, the age ranges, digging into the community needs, like we really have to drill down each of these spaces, each of these schools, each of these districts, communities have very unique needs and goals. So it is definitely not a one size fits all. And I just think they are spaces that can just transform students at a really cellular level.
When you think about it too, our kids are in school more waking hours than you're with your parent or in your home, right? Yeah. And so I always look at the school, and I just had this conversation with my daughter's principal is you guys are defining what she's doing, how she's engaged, and two, not just that, but how she can count on you guys as educators and adults who are there to support her, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that goes towards, teachers and education, but I think it also goes towards space, and there's this comfortability of it. And if it's a place where you want to be and you have that sense of belonging, it's completely different than a place that you go and you're just like, gosh, my school's cold, I don't want to be there. I'm freezing all day. That's way smarter words than me, but institutional.
Well, and I don't want to discount, we certainly radically student-centered, as it should be, but I don't want to discount the need to also consider those educators, because they are also spending all of their time there, and they have amazingly, generously, graciously gifted their brains, their spirits, their bodies to educating students, their time, all of it. And so, creating these spaces that support them in order to allow them to do these many tasks that we expect of them. There is so much that is being asked of educators, particularly today, that we have to create spaces that support them so that they can really focus on the job and the role.
Absolutely. And we think of teaching and learning as so important. It's quite literally the job, right, of an LSI in that teaching and learning space. And I'm curious, was there a time maybe or an experience or a project where you brought in teachers to that design process, and you were able to kind of include them, and can you talk us through that experience?
Sure, sure. So I think most projects, which I'm glad to be able to say that most projects we really do our best, and we have some amazing clients who also recognize the value of including educators, administrators, community students. So depending on the what the project is looking to achieve, may determine the stakeholders that we have.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a project that's been completed. And it's funny, I was on the podcast last year and I talked about a playground, and I'm doing another playground. I mean, who knew that an interior designer, like, as a background, would be so amped up about designing playgrounds, exterior spaces.
That's so
but I just
fun.
love them. It's great. So I am working with a district here who has a very unique student population. So high level emotional, social, physical, and mental challenges. And so it is critical for us to be working with not only teachers, but the behavioral specialists, the OTPT, because the playground is used for therapeutic reasons as well as play. And play can be therapeutic, but I think, again, just really getting feedback from them on the types of modalities, the types of, apparatus that they're going to need, but then talking with them also about what are the challenges that they may face in working with a student population like this, and how a space that, maybe seems simple, a playground, could support them and reinforce whatever it is that they're looking to achieve. So maybe it's a space within the playground where they can bring a student who has difficulty self-regulating, and now this is a space where they can support the student in doing that, and then that benefits them because they are able to attend to the student in a way that they currently can't. Communication is everything, and researching and drilling down and asking the questions, not being afraid, I think, to drill deeper. And it's not to say asking controversial questions, but it's to say beyond surface level questions, right? And in order to do that, and I think we all know this, you have to build trust with your clients, with the end users, and that takes time. So dedicating that time up front, helping them understand that their feedback is invaluable to us being able to execute their vision is huge.
Well, yeah, and I think oftentimes it's, having a leader that's going to allow you to ask those questions, and not necessarily controversial, but ultimately questions that are going to be like
probing.
Yeah.
And
I mean, detail oriented, right? Like I sat in a conversation once, and I was watching one of our other LSIs, and it took like about 5 minutes for us to question of like furniture aside, design aside, what do you want it to look like, feel like? What do you want your students to physically be doing with each other? And it's not a battle or anything. It's just that that's not what a lot of educators have the ability to be able to just take that out of it. Like they don't have time to sit there and reflect, and it's hard sometimes to really get to the bottom of that, right? And then how do you translate those goals, those priorities into those physical spaces now, right? And how that listening and communication are absolutely key when trying to do that and trying to translate those goals.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is about empowerment, right? So we want to do that with students. We want to do that with anyone who's using the space, educators included, is empowering them to feel that their voice is valuable, that their opinions are important, and that expressing those kinds of things to people like us, where we can take that information and actually do something with it. It's just so important.
Well, I went and did an interview for a project yesterday, and I told them, because I'm like, what's the biggest concern? And they're like, storage. And I'm like, I hate storage. I hate that conversation. And I'm like, but there's something comfortable and uncomfortable, right? Like if you can get them to the point to where you're asking them questions that takes them out of their comfort zone, and they're truly able to share with you all of the things that have been, because every job has weight, right? Like, and that weighs you down. And it's answering what is going to make this more comfortable for you, like outside of your storage, like And uncomfortable questions are sometimes the pivotal ones that get you to the point to where you're just like, okay, so let's unapologetically say like what we need to say, because this is your one time
Yeah.
that you are sitting in front of, you know, this team or a team that you have the capability of making a lasting impact for, I mean,
Yeah.
generations, right? Like
Sure.
you're making decisions that are not like a me and an I
Yeah.
conversation. This is a us, a them, a we,
Yeah.
and that goes into the future.
Sure.
So it's a
Absolutely.
hard one. So you've 11 years or 14 years in design, 11
Mm-hmm.
years in education.
Yeah.
When you think of, or what do you think the biggest changes within like from your 11 years?
I think some are incremental. Certainly, some are major. We can't have this conversation without talking about technology. So,
Mhm.
advances in technology and how that's being harnessed in the classroom. There are pros and cons. I actually just read an article on and then just watched a news report on, again, it's a kind of Nordic country. I think I had mentioned this actually in a previous podcast, but slightly different. They are actually going back to paper and pen. They are teaching and having students learn with paper and pen. And it's not to say that they're getting rid of technology in the classroom entirely, but they are moving away from digital learning. And part of that is because there's a lot of research that suggests that synthesization really happens at a greater rate with pen and paper than it does with digital learning. So, how can we couple these wonderful advancements in technology and the things that it has allowed for teachers and students to do within spaces, and then also respect, some of those very kind of formal and basic teaching tools and methods that we know really work. So I think, integration where we have even just those, a smart screen, and that's not groundbreaking, but where is it being placed? How is it being used? Do students have access to it? We're moving those things out of the classroom where the teacher is the owner and moving them into common spaces where students can start to collaborate and, meet together and present. Are we moving them into, large group instruction rooms that are less about that forward facing sort of old traditional like hall, where you've got rows of seats and the teacher is at the front, and reevaluating that and having, technology and writable surfaces on all of the walls and mobile and flexible furniture. So now you have not a space that does one thing, but you have a space that does a dozen things, and it can serve students, teachers, community. So that I think has been a really nice advancement, adding the technology. And then I think also recognizing that students learn differently. So 10 years ago, sort of more traditional methods, that the cells and bells, the forward facing, and providing students with opportunities to learn and meet them where they are. Is it individual study? Is it group study? Is it collaborative? Is it project based? Are we doing cross curriculum development where you're learning one set of skills in one classroom and another set of skills in another classroom, and you're putting them together, and you're, all of a sudden the comprehension rate, doubles.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it is that, and I applaud again the educators because they're putting together the curriculum. We are just looking to best support and reinforce that curriculum with the design in the spaces. So I'd say those are two pretty major improvements that I'm seeing that are effective.
When we work with schools at K-12, it's not just about furniture or design. It's about impact. Our radically student-centered approach puts students at the center of every decision. From that first conversation to the final walkthrough, we're focused on creating spaces that actually work for the kids, the teachers, and the community. So if you're looking to do more than just check a box on your next project, let's talk. Visit K12.com. That's KAY TWELVE.com and see how we're helping schools transform learning one student at a time. Because at K-12, it's not just about projects and furniture, it's about purpose.
What was your first reaction when you read that article about?
I actually was like, yes, And I say yes because I'm an avid reader. I read.
This is where I was going.
Okay. Yes.
Where I was going to go with it. I want to know. Wait, are you going to answer the question? I want to know.
So if I have to, I'll read on my iPad. If I have to, I'll read on a Kindle. And a lot of that time that comes down to travel because I want to bring all of the books. But I love nothing more than cracking a spine and a physical book. I love nothing more than going in to a bookstore, new or used, feeling the paper, smelling the paper, the print. I'm a dog ear page. I know some people think, oh, don't do that, but I do.
Listen,
I write in the margins. What?
That was my reaction.
This is where I went when I was listening to that. I'm like, I know Courtney has this love for books like I do because I haven't shared my numbers, but last year, a little disappointed, 112 books, right?
That is amazing. I did not even reach that. I'd say I average between 30 and 45, and that feels great.
Yeah. Well, that's a combination of Kindle and Audible, right?
But you're still learning and you're educating yourself and you're spending your time wisely.
I want a hard book.
Yeah.
And I love my Kindle. It's probably the best gift that my kids have given me. But even going back to, I would rather sit down and write a note than to type a note. And I think that we're all just different. So I was just curious what your first thought was when you read the article. And I do think sometimes there's something that goes back to having something in your hand, putting it on paper, the memorization aspect to it versus typing it, like all of the different things. And for me, I just, it's just different.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, there are people who learn really well digitally, and certainly digital natives, that's all they know. But, I think it's important to always consider what where the research is guiding us and to not discount it. And I don't think it's to say that we are eliminating digital learning and we're getting rid of screens and students aren't going to I mean, that's not realistic, but is there value? And I think certainly there is in learning how to do things in multiple ways. And pen and paper is just one way of learning and one way of synthesizing information. So
yes, because there's moments in our lives, right, when technology doesn't work. It's the most frustrating thing. And I have the ability to write a note, like Carla said, and get to where I need to be, or like, read a map or read like the signs to like be able to travel and navigate a little bit.
Can you really read a map?
I can read a map pretty good. Okay. I'm not as young as you think I am. but what I love about that is the balance, because there is also there are certain new information a lot being in this new industry. I'm constantly what's a video that I can watch quick because it's brand new information, where like if I have to reflect on something, or if I'm reading a book that's like totally just like personal, that's going to be a hardcover book. It has to be something that I can physically like pause and sit down with. And I love that with students too, in that, there's going to be times, there's going to be certain subjects that you do want the teaching and learning to be in a certain either platform or a certain type of media. But like you said, not to limit it, because as a person who is very, pen and paper, there are still moments that I know I need a visual with this, or I'm not going to understand it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I always need a visual.
Right. And so, but I think you know that, and you know that that's how you learn.
Yep.
Some people are auditory learners. Some people need to have it physically written down. So, when we talk about students and different learning techniques or ways that students learn, if we are not supporting and designing spaces that can allow for that and that flexibility, what percentage of students are we leaving out?
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah, even if we do design for that, what percentage of students are we leaving out? I have an old presentation, Courtney, I'll have to send it to you, but it talks about the number of students that educators actually touch. And I forget who did the study, but the number was so low that ultimately it's like 25%, and it's around 25% of the student population is who really benefits wholly from education. So then what happens to that other 75%? I was definitely, obviously, we all know me well enough by now, I was part of that 75%. But it's just one of those things. I'm like, how do you address the more learners and in a way, and then how do you do that through what we do on a day-to-day basis? And in theory, we're all just one piece, right? So on our side where furniture is, it's just one piece of a huge puzzle.
Huge.
That the more we put it together, and we're just like, all of this matters, every voice does, and every bit of experience does. I don't know that we're getting there, but it's not.
We are. And people like us, right? Companies like yours, certainly companies like mine as well. Like yes, we might be a small part, but all of us are so passionate about it and we're committed to it. And I'll take that 25%. I mean, really at the end of the day, you had asked early on, how I got into this, and so much a part of it was really feeling the need to connect and make a difference, even if it's minor. That's so fulfilling, and to be a part of that, and to hear and to see the changes, to hear from the educators or hear from the students 6 months or 2 years later, what it has allowed for them to do, or how it has changed the way students are learning or the way they're teaching. I wouldn't give that up for anything.
Yeah, I agree. We always have tons of questions that we can ask and tons of different directions that we can go, but I have all these curiosity
Sure.
that aren't necessarily listed. Do you have like an all-time favorite project, or it could be a component of, right?
I do. It would be like saying, who's your favorite child, right? She's like, I already know.
We'll
have the answer.
Yeah, they know.
Certainly, there are some that are holistic projects. One I had mentioned in a previous interview was a playground that we completed last year for a rural district, and that was incredible. They hadn't had a new playground in 30 years. Community members were leaving the area because the playground wasn't providing them with what they needed, and this replacement playground has just changed everything for them. And now they've got neighboring communities coming to them. My husband actually worked with someone who was born and raised there, and she's like, it's all anybody talks about. So nice. That, and that was completed last summer, so that still feels really good. I work with a lot of smaller rural communities and districts, and I would say, while it's certainly wonderful when you have big, chunky budgets and you've got lots of schools in a really large district that you can touch, the opportunity to do projects like that at that scale is exciting and it's thrilling. For me, and again, I think it just comes down to sort of where my own goals are, sort of my moral, ethical compass, and what drives me and fuels me as a person is the impact that I see when we are able to work with these smaller rural districts. Oftentimes I think they feel less important, or their voice isn't being heard. They don't have the big budgets, and they have maybe in the past experienced with other design firms that they are, that as a client, they're not as important because their budget isn't as big. And I really don't approach it that way. I mean, every project deserves the same level of attention. It doesn't matter what the budget is. And because these districts are really so integral to their community, what we do there makes a bigger impact across the community versus a very, very large district where you might have, 40-mile radius or something like that, 25 buildings, and, the superintendent doesn't know Jimmy Johnson in second grade and his brother, Larry Johnson in 10th grade. Whereas, in these smaller districts, sometimes these superintendents, they know that kid from kindergarten all the way through graduation. Oftentimes the teachers are graduates of that school themselves. So having the history, having the connection, those really are the projects for me that I feel are the most impactful. They're not always the most glamorous, but I really feel like they're the most impactful.
We talk about, how many times have you heard me and Adam say that, Jessica?
So many. I mean, like a million times. That's why, I was encouraged by Carla and Adam. I'm working with the school who's building their first cafeteria ever. And the district is one building. to K to 12, they went home. They went home for lunch if they didn't want to bring it in. The district is so small that they actually can just walk, the 2 blocks to where it was. And I remember I showed up for lunch and I went to their like local diner that also was a pastry store, and I got a bunch of pastries for the district, and I sat down, and it was, we were a carpeted old building that, we were in this little makeshift kind of room, and it was just that type of project is not only rewarding, but secretly as a type A, it's also can be challenging sometimes, right?
Oh,
because
absolutely.
you don't have that huge budget and you're trying to balance all of these things, that it's almost like this creative challenge that you and your team gets to go through. And I absolutely love that. And I really appreciate you sharing that about those districts. I know that Rochester, is close to where I was in upstate in Oswego. And my first experience in education, I student taught in Watertown. I student taught in all of those those cities that are just, those towns that do feel very like closed and very like, not willing to really have someone come in unless you really build that trust. And I worked for an ABCD program, which is an agriculture business child development program. And so the kids that we were servicing were the migrant workers who were working in the field. So they would drop them off at 5:45, then pick them up when the sun went down. And I wasn't there all day, but I took from that as like a 19-year-old girl just getting into education. I mean, that really brought me to wanting to be passionate around kids and wanting to stay in kids, wanting to stay in schools that were smaller, that are really rewarding. And I think the area that you're in, the reason why, LaBella Associates is in so many is because you built that reputation and you built this trust, and community is so clear in your work that it's something that we really appreciate as a company who is completely built on this relationships. That's what we do. We do furniture, but we can't have furniture without having that relationship, that trust, that collaboration, so that, the things that I put in front of you, just like the buildings you design, are actually being utilized, right? For all kids.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you for that. I'm very proud to be a part of this firm, and I'm proud of the work that we have done and are doing. So that's nice to hear. Thank you. Yeah.
I do have a wrap up, Carla, if you want me to, because going on
LaBella. Want to do a wrap up?
Well, I just wanted to ask about resources, because another thing that I did, not the whole wrap up, Carla, but, diving into the work, I know there's like a newsletter that you guys, put out for educators and for design communities. And so with your belief in, the evidence-based research, design, do you have like a resource or insight that you want to share, with all of our readers or all of our listeners in design communities?
I mean, I think our best resources are people like you, right? Really knowing who, as a designer, as a project manager, my resources are all of the manufacturers, all of the vendors reps, all of the people who, like you said, like you are on the furniture side and you can't put furniture in unless there's a space to put it down in. Well, we feel the same way, right? We could design a shell, but we're not going to be able to design a successful project without having access to the resources and these types of relationships that we're able to develop too. You can only know so much, and it's important for me, my expertise in terms of educational design is a component of what educational design is, as a holistic piece. So I think I'm smart enough to know I only know what I know, right? And who to reach out to. We don't know what we don't know, no. And to reach out to those who are experts in their area of design, and working collectively to really shape those spaces and to, we talk about those support tools, or, whether it's technology, it's furniture, it's finishes, it's lighting, all of those are parts and pieces of the overall design and make or break the ability for a project to be successful. So I don't know if that's unique or a secret by any means, but certainly has served me well in my own career, is really connecting with and developing important relationships, professional, courteous relationships with the other design professionals.
Yeah, our biggest asset is people. I always say that.
Yes, that's a perfect way to say it.
And it doesn't make a difference on, where on the totem pole you believe that someone is at some point in time. one relationship can define the outcome of something. One phone call can make a huge difference, and it's, I just think it's people.
Yeah. All I was going to say is that's one of my favorite parts about A4LE. I know we mentioned it early on, but as an organization, it is built up of designers, educators, superintendents, facilities directors, manufacturers, vendors, and it is an organization where everyone involved is there for the same purpose. And that is huge. And so resource sharing is just a part of how the chapters communicate, the types of tours or CEUs that get put on, the conferences, all of that. It is about resource sharing. It is about learning, pushing the needle, to get to better. We are all working our way towards that. So that's another great resource, I think, too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's an organization too. And obviously I have a different perspective than most people, but as a member and as a team member, for some reason, it's very different than other organizations. It breaks down the competitor barriers in so many instances where, you might walk out of a project interview and see your biggest competition, like sitting there waiting to go in next. But in 2 weeks, you're going to be sitting at, a social function or something, and you're going to be sharing with that person because at the end of the day, that's what matters most. The competition is still there. Like, don't get me wrong. But I do think that in those environments, like it breaks that barrier down.
I agree. And if everyone's goal is to create better educational spaces, then by sharing that information and having other firms be successful at doing it, all you've done is just promoted the fact that it works. Right. And so it allows the next person to come in and do that. I mean, that's what we want. We want others to be paving the way so that we can walk a little bit farther. We do it as well. So
100%. Yeah. Well, I still just adore you, Courtney.
I adore you too. This was such a pleasure and such an honor. I'm very grateful to be asked and to contribute in this way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your expertise and insights today. It was a pleasure learning with you, Courtney. If listeners would like to hear or share their own radically student-centered moments, we invite you to like, comment, and share at betterlearningpodcast.com.
The Better Learning Podcast is produced by Matt Rogers and edited by Callie Jones. The views and opinions shared on this podcast are those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily represent the perspectives of their affiliated companies, organizations, or associations.